Hello and welcome to Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. I'm Shane Anderson, and we've certainly got a lot to get through on today's show because flat racing is certainly back in a big way. Feature racing coming up in the UK and throughout Europe this weekend, as well as the United States. Of course, in the UK, we've got the running of the Lockinge Stakes over 1,600 metres at Newbury. That's going to be a fantastic contest. We've also got a really strong card at Newmarket on Sunday in Ireland, a good card also at Naas as we continue the build-up to events such as Royal Ascot. And Group 1 action coming up from France with Paris Longchamp to host both the French 2,000 guineas and 1,000 guineas. On today's show, we'll also give you plenty of tips for this weekend's racing. And we'll head over to the United States as well and catch up with Anthony Stabile for the latest on the second leg of the US Triple Crown. That, of course, being the Preakness Stakes. And there's certainly been plenty of controversy in the US over the past few days. Let's welcome up into the team. It's great to have Stephen Harris and Ed Quigley with me once again. Stephen, good to catch up. The Kentucky Derby, believe it or not, certainly a big talking point, but it's an amazing thing when we think global racing. It's not just about what happens on the track on the day. We can often get contentious issues, which certainly will capture the imagination of the broader press on many occasions.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a pretty mixed week for racing. The actual standard in the UK has been really good. There's been a cracking meeting at Chester this week that we've really enjoyed. York, of course. But over in America, the Bob Baffert thing is very damaging for racing, I think, Shane. The one thing punters want is a level playing field. They don't want to feel they've been cheated. And with someone like Bob Baffert, obviously we've got to be careful. He hasn't yet been found guilty of this latest offence, but it's a long, long list of accusations and being found guilty in the past. And the whole way this has been handled is not good for racing worldwide at all, and US racing in particular, especially with, you know, the animal rights people all over it at the moment. So worrying times in America.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that shortly. Ed Quigley, good to catch up with you again. As we've now shifted from the national hunt or jumps racing season in Europe to pretty much the flat season taking centre stage, it's been quite amazing seeing some of the performances in some of these lead-up races for races like the Derby and the Oaks, and the form certainly looks a little bit mixed at the moment.
Absolutely, Shane. Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, it's been one of those types of things at the moment with the trial races, hasn't it? We build these trial races up to find the answers for the key races, and yet I've got to be honest with you, I've been totally underwhelmed by a lot of the performances we've had, especially the races at Lingfield and at Chester. You've had a few slowly run races, but they've all kind of ended in a heap. A few outsiders springing surprises. The only one horse who's really ticked a lot of the boxes for me on the back of their inverted commas trial would be Ballet, if that's how you pronounce it, from Ballet Doyle. Absolutely ran his rivals ragged in the Derrenstown. And when we've been talking about a whole host of perhaps unconvincing trial winners, I mean, that horse couldn't have done much more, it's fair to say. And I think looks a worthy favourite for the Derby on the back of that. But as you say, Shane, yeah, some proper head-scratching results at this time of the year, has to be said.
All right, guys, let's get into now the news of the week. And the biggest talking point in world racing at the moment is Medina Spirit, of course, winner of the Kentucky Derby just over a week ago. And it was, Stephen, a bit of a romantic story in many ways. We had a horse that was purchased for only $1,000 as a yearling, coming out and winning arguably the biggest race they have in the United States. And now with this extraordinary situation where the horse has tested positive to a corticosteroid called betamethasone, which Bob Baffert, the trainer, initially said the horse had never received in any level of treatment, but has since come out and clarified that, saying it's contained in an ointment that they're using on the horse who's had a skin rash. Regardless of any of that conversation, I think the broader discussion point really has to be how medical or medicinal instruments are used through US racing to such a level that it probably is far greater than any other region in the world, and that's putting some big question marks as to the validity of the sport.
Exactly, Shane. I mean, the thing with drugs in racing, it probably always has been a problem. I know in the UK and Ireland, Jim Bolge has been very outspoken recently about what he perceives as cheating by some people. I mean, you can read into that what you will. But in America, it's a much more accepted part and parcel. They just have degrees of what you can use when. Now, Bob Baffert is obviously a top trainer. He's won the Kentucky Derby numerous times. He must know exactly what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. But more pertinently, he probably knows exactly what he can get away with and what he can't. I mean, he's been caught so many times. And what I didn't like, Shane, and I think will stick in the craw of punters generally is that when he announced this himself, he was allowed to break the news, which is pretty outrageous to start with. Not just that, but the manner in which he's basically twisted and turned in the last week, changing his story. And in the end, he's come out and said, well, yes, the horse did get the drug that you mentioned, that it wasn't supposed to treat some dermatitis, skin complaint. It all does sound pretty murky, doesn't it? It hardly encourages you to start cracking away into American racing. And in these times, Shane, we've all got to be careful of public perception. And if you go down this route, that people start thinking it's cruel, horses are being doped, or they're running under pain that they're running through because of drugs, you're on a very slippery slope. So it's really bad news for worldwide racing, really.
I think, Ed, to bring you into the conversation, one of the real contentious issues that exists, and this is very much probably a modern day trend that we're seeing it really amplified, is the relationship between horse trainer and vet. It's almost like the vet now is the most important piece of the training puzzle for a lot of major stables. And I think that is an area that, whether it can be regulated a bit more tightly or even discussed in a more broader sense, probably needs to be explained to broader racing fans as to how that relationship works and what type of regime some of these horses are under.
Yeah, absolutely, Shane. And it's quite not funny, for want of a better phrase, say it's funny, but it's almost like, oh, it's the vet's fault, the vet, like this anonymous body who just comes into a multi-million-pound racehorse, slaps a bit of ointment on some skin, and then it all goes wrong, and you say, oh, it was the vet didn't read the label properly, or it was the vet. So it seems a convenient loophole a lot of the time, in my view, in order to get around this. And going back to what Stephen said, it's a good point, because I believe like the techniques of it, I wouldn't particularly know, but it says 21 picograms, which Bob Baffert says he's consulted his equine pharmaceuticalist, or whatever the exact phrase is, and says 21 picograms wouldn't be performance enhancing. So given that Bob Baffert has seemed to have spun the story more than the EastEnders Christmas special, then I just got my feeling, as you say, he's probably, look, he knows what he can play within the rules and the regulations to an extent. He claims, the vets put some ointment on the skin. They were unaware. Perhaps they didn't read the label properly or whatever. I don't know. Only he's going to know exactly what happened. But there does seem to be this big thing. Final point on this as well is it almost very much feels like Bob Baffert's leading his own investigation. If something over here happened like this, any kind of press release from a big trainer would be shut down. The BHA would be all over it, and it would be them leading the investigation. You've got Bob Baffert here kind of bringing out bits and pieces out of the woodwork and saying, I'm being fully transparent, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I don't know. We heard stories about the hay being contaminated. We've heard other stories about, the skin ointments. Then there was no way possible that the horse could have had that steroid in him. Then it is possible because of the vet. And look, at the end of the day, we're just going around in circles. But as I said, I think it's 30 times precisely that a similar thing like this has come up throughout Bob Baffert's training career. So it just doesn't look good at the end of the day. But again, as Stephen does say, the American approach to kind of medication within the rules of racing is far different to what we kind of see over here and in France.
I think the one sort of decision that really needs to be understood around the use of drugs in racing, or as many people would like to reference it, around medicine use. The fact is, there's still these horses have to compete drug-free on the day. So it comes down to the stable making sure that occurs, that these horses are competing on a level playing field. When we have instances like this and we have trainers like this who clearly are pushing boundaries, well, there needs to be some serious outcomes that follow up. Guys, let's talk about the classic trials that have been taking place. Last weekend, of course, we had 2 classic trials at Lingfield. We also had a couple at Leopardstown in Ireland. We'll start with Lingfield. Stephen, upset results on both occasions, and they did look to be, on face value, fairly poor renewals ability-wise.
Yeah, I thought it was Group 3 form at best, Shane. I mean, Adea was really disappointing behind Third Realm at Lingfield. Third's a really nice horse. Everything Roger Varian's running at the moment is winning. So you have to respect the stable form. He's hot at the moment. I'd be amazed if either of them had anything to do with the Epsom Derby in a month or two. Sherbet Lemon for Archie Watson was a real breakthrough winner at the top level for him, but she's surely not good enough to win the Oaks. I mean, they're all in a heap, very modest form to chuck out. I think we're going to come on to Leopardstown in a minute, aren't we, which did have some proper trials, competitive racing, and that is likely to be much more important going forwards than what we saw at Lingfield.
Yeah, Ed, just on those Lingfield trials, and they seem to be races that were run without a great deal of tactical nous, so to speak. They just looked pretty average affairs, both of them.
Yeah, potentially, yes. That's what I touched upon at the top of the show. Some muddling results we've had at the moment. Your Sherbet Lemon went hit 28-1, beating Save Forest at 12s. All kinds of mixed signals out of that one. And yeah, third round 14-1 upset as well. Again, another race where Adayar was sent off 6-5 favourite, didn't get the job done. With Adayar, I just thought the horse looked a big old slow thing, to be honest with you. You see him in the paddock. I wouldn't shock me in time if he made up in something like a St. Ledger candidate. I think looking a lot further down the field, he just looked a relentless galloper. What it all means in regards to Epsom, as I said, I would tend to agree with Stephen. I wouldn't get blown away by those results at Lingfield on Saturday.
All right, let's focus on Leopardstown then, and Bolshoi Ballet in particular looked quite outstanding, Stephen.
Yeah, he was really heavily backed, Shane. We've been talking about these Aidan O'Brien horses. He ended up evens. He's quite a lot bigger than that earlier in the week. The only thing I'll say about Bolshoi is extremely impressive. He's won 3 times. All of them have been at Leopardstown. He's run twice away from Leopardstown. Now, admittedly, first time out was on his debut. You can probably forgive that. But he's been beaten twice away from Leopardstown. So at a short price now for the Derby, that would be a slight concern. The other thing was the Derrinstown that he won. He got a very good ride from Ryan Moore. Everything panned out ideally. He sat first or second. He was driven clear before the home turn, and he absolutely sprinted clear and won. Epsom is a completely different race. There's liable to be probably the best part of 20 runners, undulations. It's a totally different test. He's now 7-4 favourite. Well, obviously, connections. Ryan's going to ride him. He's obviously the best horse at Ballydoyle. But do you want to take 7-4 in what could be a 20-runner Epsom Derby? Totally different track, up in trip, lots of question marks on the day. There's no way in the world he can be any less than that. So from a punting point of view, it was a very impressive, the standout performance so far, but we've still got a long way to go. I wouldn't be surprised if something else came out of the woodwork, probably one of O'Brien's as well.
I think you touched on a really good point there. And Ed, with that performance by Bolshoi Ballet, yes, he's a worthy favourite based on what we've seen thus far, but the price does look tight. What do you want to do for an Oaks bet or a Derby bet now 6 weeks out? Do you still want to wait a little bit longer?
Yeah, I'm normally trying to nail my colours to the mast, anti-post. You know me, Shane, but I'm absolutely tearing my hair out over these races, to be honest with you. There's nothing leaping off the page. Bolshoi Ballet's produced the one sparkling performance we want to see from a trial, and as a consequence, more on sufferance for the fact that everything else looks absolute pants, is the fact he's now 7-4. Yeah, he might go off 6-4 in a month's time if the rest of them do end up being particularly average. So, as Stephen says, there's not much margin in the price now. Yet, having said that, what do you want else? What would you want to lay him at? I mean, what else is in there to get enthusiastic about? I suppose we've got the Dante to come, which stablemate high definition. If he pulverises the field, then he shortens up, doesn't he? And at least poses Ryan Moore a bit of a question mark in that sense. But the worthy favourite, it has to be said. A month in advance at 7-4, not for me. But odds against on the day, probably looks a fair price if he gets there, because as I said, that was he ran right away to the line. I disagree with Stephen in terms of I don't disagree with Stephen in terms of the correct stuff. Factually, the horse has been beaten the 2 times he ran away from Leopardstown. One of them was on his debut, and one of them was an absolutely bottomless ground when he went to France as well. So I'd be willing to put a line through that. But I think a mile and a half will suit. Pedigree suits. Everything ticks all the right boxes. Again, I don't know about you, Shane. Do you get excited about 7-4 shots a month in advance? Not for me, but he's the worthy favourite by a long way at present.
No, I'm certainly not interested in getting involved there this far out at that price. But I think once we get a chance to sort of dissect the form through York, and also over the next few weeks as we see perhaps a few more Derby and Oaks contenders step out, that'll give us a clearer picture. Guys, we had this remarkable situation last weekend where 2 long price gambles were landed. In the UK and in Ireland, in national hunt races, we saw Danilo Dairy being heavily backed. I think his top price of about 100-1 into 13-2. And we also had Call Me Freddie from 40-1 into around 7-4. Both land the spoils in low-grade jumps races. Of course, as always, Stephen, social media lit up with people either defending the fact that these long price gambles landed, or those saying it was a bit of a smelly affair. What was your perspective?
I think you need to divide them up, Shane. Danilo Dieri is trained by Robert Beavis, who used to be with Nigel Twiston-Davies and is a very shrewd sort of pointing background trainer. Now, this one had run 3 times over hurdles over inadequate trips on desperate ground and had somehow been allotted an incredibly low opening chase mark up to 3 miles, and he was a revelation. Now, we say he was back from 100 down to 13 to 2. Well, we all know how difficult it is to get on in the mornings. Who'll have got 100? It takes pennies literally to shorten them up. And in fact, at the off, his Betfair SP was around 13. So although he returned 13 to 2, he was still 12 to 1 at the off. Now, that being said, the performance was absolutely staggering. I mean, he jumped superbly. He got the race won a mile out, and Warwick is a very difficult track to jump round first. Look, the fences come up thick and fast, but he'd won the race immediately. So it was a very impressive display. I tell you something that is amazing, Shane. He's gone up 52 pounds in one hit. I mean, it's a bit like me over lockdown, to be honest. I've never seen such a dramatic weight increase in such a short space of time. But I mean, that is I don't think I've ever seen that. 52 pounds in one hit for that, and quite right too. I think he's in the 80s now. He'll probably win again this spring. He's such a good jumper. Now the other one, Call Me Freddie, that is totally different. I mean, this horse has been sent off 100, 50, 50, 100, 40, 66. I mean, he'd been harder to find than your hairdresser, Shane, over the last few months of racing. Absolutely shown nothing at all. All of a sudden, there's a late jockey change and Rachel Blackmore pops up on him. 11 to 4 favourite. Now, he only won by half an inch, but that does leave a bad taste with punters. We've had it in the UK before. Ed will remember. Matty Batcher had an unfortunate incident with his mechanic, couldn't get his car started.
I was on air that
Tony
time,
McCoy turned. Tony McCoy turned up to ride it. The whole world's been on all morning, but would have been a luck Matty Batchelor's car broke. So it has happened previously. I don't think that's wonderful for racing. The first one I've got no problem with at all. The second one, totally out of order.
All right, Ed, are you of the same opinion? Do you think one was a bit smellier than the other?
Yeah, potentially, yes. I was actually on air that day, back on at the races when, I remember Mick Fitz was on course and connections were pressed. Said, Matty Batchelor's car couldn't get out of the garage or something. But AP McCoy didn't have a ride in the race, so he's come in for the ride last minute. So, yeah, it was all fun and games. Yeah, regards to the first one, look, it just... The horse from a pointing background, it's easy in the aftermath, isn't it? In hindsight, but it was a horse who was bred to do better over further, jumped like an old hand around Warwick on the first time out. And look, I just think it was a case of we've harped on about handicap marks and everything. Maybe 35 had him massively adrift, just to top off how well the assessor's done this season. But in regards to the second one in Ireland, I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe they found a genuine issue. They've got the horse right. It's all been hushed up to the last minute. And then, Rachel Blackmore comes in for the ride and gets the horse home. To be honest with you, though, look, what we should point out is this isn't like just something new. You know, it's only since social media's come along that everyone seems to go into meltdown. This has been going on for decades, in truth. It's just now, like everything in life, it's more kind of exposed, isn't it, through the social media lens, where it doesn't make it right or not, and it doesn't often tell you all the background and everything that is going on behind the scenes. But nonetheless, a little bit smelly, but I just have to take it all with a pinch of salt and find a little bit amusing at the end of the day. We all think we know everything, and then you get these horses from out of nowhere come and get the job done.
Yeah, I think one point, though, when it comes to exposed form, all of the major racing jurisdictions have heavily funded integrity and handicapping departments whose role is to actually analyse and give horses what their true mark is. So when we're seeing horses really get under the radar like this, there's a breakdown somewhere, and I think it's something that needs to always be prioritised from those principal authorities. All right, guys, let's have a look at the upcoming races for the week ahead. Now, I'm pretty excited because one of my favourite races of the year comes up this weekend, and that is the Lockinge Stakes, 1,600 metres for the Star Milers, of course, being run at Newbury. I think we're set to see potentially a really outstanding prospect come out in Palace Pier. But as we have a look at the current markets and field courtesy of IrishRacing.com, bless him, Century Dream at big prices. Duke of Hads is another one there at a big price with Happy Power. Lupe Fernandez currently in the market at 11-2 for Aidan O'Brien. Lord Campari at a big price. Lord Glitters, who's good enough on his day to win this type of race, at 20-1. My Oberon is well in the market at 8-1 for William Haggis. Now, Palace Pier is the favourite. John Gosden, Frankie Dettori, currently 8-13 with Bet365. Pogo, Safe Voyage. Stormy Antarctic. Tilsit is another one at a big price. Top Rank, well in the market. PJ McDonald taking the ride for the Tate Yard at 8-1. Toro Strike and Lady Balthorpe, others to consider. Stephen, I think it's a case here of if Palace Pier turns up anywhere near his best, he wins this in an absolute canter. What's your view?
I think he's miles clear on form, Shane. 6 out of 7. When he ran first time out at Sandown, he was supposed to be 80% fit. Well, he won by 8 lengths. He won by half the length of the hill, to be honest with you. It was a really impressive return. To play devil's advocate, he's 6-4 on. I think that's his price on form. The only time he's got beaten was at Ascot last backend when the ground was really soft. And in the UK, we've got a lot of weather this week. It's rained most of today, which is we're recording on Thursday. There's more rain forecast for Newbury. It's good to soft at the minute. So if it misses it, it'll be perfect for him. I don't think he wants soft ground. So Newbury can get very testing if they get a lot of weather. We're guessing, we don't know. But at this stage, that would be a slight concern. I think he's miles clear on form. I think Gosden is aiming him for the Eclipse at Sandown in the summer. That's going to be his target. I think he'll be a real red-hot favourite for that. Maybe he'll get away with the ground at Newbury if they don't get too much rain. But it would just be one note of caution at a short price.
Ed, what's your view of the overall standard of that middle distance rank in predominantly UK racing there with Palace Pier? On ratings, he looks head and shoulders above his rivals. Is he a horse that you'd want to be supporting, or is there something else that could emerge?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to this race, it just looks a lovely, I'd say, a pipe opener. He's already had that at Sandown, hasn't he? And then he'll go on to the Eclipse. And whether he gets a mile and a half in time, I doubt it. But 10 furlongs, you'd think he would step up to that distance. But yeah, look, he's a really exciting type, isn't he? His price is reflected at 4-6. Lope Fernandez is definitely a horse we should touch upon because, he's just got all sorts of different trips, this horse. They've tried him over 6. They started him off his career over 7. It's only since he's gone up to a mile, it almost seemed like they found the key to him at last. He ran really well over in the Breeders' Cup, went third, and then, it was a listed contest last time out on his comeback, but he absolutely dotted in at Leopardstown in really impressive fashion. So he's an unexposed miler, it has to be said. I think there'll be a lot more to come from him in the top 1 mile contest this year. Now, this might be the only time they do meet in regards to these two, because it does sound like, regards to Palace Pier, they are looking up in trip rather than staying at a mile. But yeah, Palace Pier, great horse, class act. He's race fit. He arrives on the back of an emphatic win. Apart from the ground turning absolutely bottomless here, he should win this and go on to continue his winning thread.
Stephen, on the other sort of races on the card, it does look to be a really strong program at Newbury on Saturday. We've got the Carnarvon, the Al Rayyan, also known as the Aston Park Stakes. We've got a fillies trial and a good betting contest in the London Gold Cup, which is a handicap race for the 3-year-olds. Overall, what's your assessment of the card at Newbury?
Yeah, I mean, there are small fields now, Shane. We were moaning about small fields on firm ground last week, and this week we're going to get rain and there's small fields again. So it's slightly disappointing in that regard. I'm really looking forward to seeing Al Arzi, who goes in the 225. I think he's going to be top class. He was very impressive at Newbury last time. I think he's probably my strongest bet of the weekend. He's odds against at the moment. I'm very much looking forward to seeing him. Haggis is absolutely flying at the minute. All of his horses are winning left, right and centre all over the country, and hopefully he can carry on where he left off over this course and distance last month. Okay,
what about you, Ed? Is there anything else standing out at Newbury that you like?
Yeah, in the 410, which I think is a race which is going to be incredibly informative. It's the 10 furlong listed race for the fillies. Some really excited types in there, including Sea Empress for William Haggis, really looking daughter Cedar Stars from an Exceed and Excel mare as well. So really exciting prospect, that one. Won nicely at Newcastle on debut. One with plenty up the sleeve, shall we say. Only won a length at the line, but was only just doing enough. And but look, you can make a case for a lot of them in there. But essentially what I would say is, I'm going to play it late again. With this changeable weather at the moment, I'm not going to get involved too much now. But I would say I think that 410, we've talked about a lot of fillies not exactly setting the world alight at the moment. in regards to what they've been doing in their 3-year-old campaign. So I get a feeling we could see 1 or 2 very good ones come out of this 410 at Newbury.
Okay, that's good advice. A Newmarket card, Stephen, with a couple of listed races on the program. Is anything standing out from your perspective? Is it a card that you're interested in?
I'm very always wary at Newmarket looking for track biases, Shane. So what I'll do, as from a punting point of view, is watch the first race or two on the straight track and try and see if there's any bias. It's even more complicated there sometimes when the field sizes are small, because they can still race in 2 or even 3 groups with a difference of opinion. So it'll be a watching brief for me, but we should learn plenty for the future.
Okay, what about you, Ed? Anything standing out at this stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Just from I hate it when the trainer goes on record, says, "Oh, it could be the best horse I've trained." That's often the ticket to never win another race, isn't it? When you go back through what's happened with previous horses like that. But Belosa in the 240 for Jane Chapel-Hine. This individual looked an absolute machine when bolting up here last time out. Won 7 lengths, could have been 17 lengths at the line, quick and clear. Again, you could argue perhaps the race overall wasn't particularly strong, and a couple of those who were expected to do well didn't. I think the John Gosden individual who was sent off joint favourite trailed home last race in the ambulance. But look, nonetheless, Belosa absolutely hacked up on that occasion. Again, however, harping on the same old boring thing, but that was on rattling quick ground on good to firm. If the rains arrive, I'd be getting a bit nervous of taking 2-1, but Belosa does look special, weather permitting.
Okay, let's switch our attention to what's coming up on Sunday. Naas in Ireland's got some good program races coming up, including the 410, which is the Coolmore Stud Irish EBF Filly Sprint at Group 3 level. And we can see Kaylin Clister certainly looking a leading contender with a couple of runs under its belt. Connor Torelli Chapel, Freedom of Speech, the well-named son of Australia out of Vocal Nation. I should say daughter of Australia. Heart to Hearts in the race, Humana Estrella, Hainsbury Lane, Mambo Beauty, Missing Matron, another Jim Bolger runner. Of course, Jim's been in fantastic form so far this season. Quick Susie, and the short-named Yet, another Coolmore runner for Aidan O'Brien. Some of these early season group races for the 3-year-old fillies, Stephen, can throw up a couple of strange results, but I think what we're seeing in Ireland at the moment is Jim Bolger has had an amazing start to the season. Of course, now Aidan O'Brien's starting to build some momentum, so probably the safest way is to focus on their runners.
Yeah, following informed stables, Shane, is probably the best system there is. If you're going to tell somebody who was starting out being a punter something to do, you'd give them a list of 5 stables and just back their horses. It is amazing how it happened, particularly in Ireland. I liked Missing Matron here. We're not sure of the final fields at this stage, but she's a really nice progressive performer, had 3 runs. Again, talking about the ground, at the moment at the Curragh, it looks like it's good or just good to soft. If they get the rain that we've been getting, it could be completely different. And I think she'll handle it better than most. She's a strong, improving sort who ran very well last time in a strong race. And if it does rain, she'll definitely handle conditions. Okay,
Ed, your views on the card at Naas?
Yeah, well, funny enough, Missing Matron's the one I've kind of underlined here because I think it wasn't Kevin Manning who rode her on her debut, it was Rory Cleary. And I think his quotes in the aftermath were that filly absolutely loved hock deep ground on that occasion. And couple that with a quote from Jim Bolger saying, I think we'll see even more from her when she goes over 6 furlongs. So she's up to 6 here. Keep your eyes on the weather, essentially, because, if it really does empty, I think 6 furlongs of soft to be exactly what is needed. You know, she did disappoint at the Curragh on a penultimate start. That was over the minimum trip on quick ground. She just looked outpaced. I think 6 furlongs of soft ground. She's going to need quite niche requirements, it has to be said. But if she does get those conditions, I think she could take some stopping.
Let's have a look at the French 2000 Guineas. And of course, we see a lot of the horses that progressed from the 2000 Guineas at Newmarket of a couple of weeks ago, including the winner Poetic Flair for Jim Bolger. Aidan O'Brien's likely to run Sir Mark's Basilica, who's highly regarded. And also another horse to keep an eye on there is the Learjet, who has certainly got a decent reputation. Stephen, when it comes to the French 2000 Guineas, are you sticking with the exposed form and Poetic Flair?
I don't think that the 2000 Guineas was a wonderful race. I'm probably slightly biased because I was on the second Master of the Seas, so I'm still sort of recovering from that getting beat, having thought it had won, to be quite truthful. Poetic Flair is very tough, got a very hard ride from 2 furlongs out by Manning and got up right on the post. The ground would be a slight question mark for me. I'm assuming it'll be soft in France. It always seems to be. And at these big meetings, they water if it isn't. So although Poetic Flare has won on yielding ground, I don't think it was that bad that day. And I still remember him running in the Dewhurst on really soft ground when he fell out the back of the television last season. Now, he might be an improved model this time around. He's certainly tough and durable. We don't know the full final field. Instinctively, I'd be looking to be against him. Second run back, off the back of a hard race. Not convinced that the Newmarket 2000 Guineas was a fantastic race, and the ground likely to be a lot more testing. So there's quite a few negatives at what's likely to be quite a short price.
Ed, what I've noticed over the years is you will get horses from Ireland and England with massive reputations go to the French 2000 Guineas, and on exposed form you'd think they'd come out on top, but quite often the locals prove ridiculously hard to beat in their main classic race.
Yeah, indeed. Sometimes a bit of local course knowledge comes into play, and often we see the tactical side of things in France has often been known as being very stop-start. A lot of races which they crawl round, don't they? And they become a bit of a sprint. Those type of races have caught out a few, how should you say, of the better horses on the form that we've seen. And perhaps I think Poetic Flare, he toughed it out nicely. I think he'd want a properly strongly run race. He wouldn't want this to become tactical by any stretch of imagination. Just two horses you touched upon, Shane. St. Mark's Basilica, definitely one of interest, of course, not been seen since winning the Dewhurst. That's top class form. Whether he takes his chance in this or not, we shall see. Obviously, he's in the Irish 2000 Guineas, which is a week later. So I'm sure they'll make up their mind which of the two they go for that. You mentioned the Learjet. I believe the Learjet's not going to run. They're not happy with him at the 11th hour. And it's the bigger story, I suppose, is with Kieran Fallon Jr., who went over to France in order to ride the Learjet and not ride Oxted at York during the week. Well, he's gone over there. Now he doesn't ride the Learjet, and he's stuck in quarantine in a Paris hotel room for the next fortnight. So that's all gone absolutely belly up for poor Kieran Fallon. So, yeah, an interesting one. A few of the unknown French horses, I'm going to sit on the fence with. But, yeah, St. Mark's Basilica won the Dewhurst pretty nicely, and it'd be interesting to see if he rocks up.
Okay, and the other Group 1 race on the card is for the fillies, the 1000 Guineas. And as we have a quick scroll through some of the field here, Silvestri, Lullaby Moon, Tiger Tanaka, who of course won a Group 1 last season, Mother Earth coming through the 1000 Guineas, and her upset performance to win there as we scroll through the remainder of the field. Just your views on this, Stephen, with Mother Earth, likely to take her place, or hopefully for Aidan O'Brien and the Coolmore operation. What you saw at Newmarket, would you want to stick with her again?
I think she'll probably sets the standard on the figures, Shane, but liable to be underpriced or short enough given connections. The one I like here, and again, we don't know the final runners, but Rafe Beckett ran 6 times as a juvenile, has already proven herself on testing ground. If they get the weather, it looks like, was a winner at Chantilly on her final start in October. And we were just talking about informed stables. Well, Rafe Beckett is absolutely flying. They're having well-backed winners all over the place. I think he's had 6 in the last 14 days. Everything he runs is winning or going close. She steps up in trip. She should be okay. I would imagine she'll be fully fit and ready for this valuable prize. And she's definitely a 3-year-old worth following, whether she runs on Sunday or sometime in the spring back in the UK. One to keep an eye on.
All right, Ed, do you have a firm opinion yet for the 1000 Guineas?
No, I'd probably keep it short but sweet. But I, depending on prices, I probably look to try and just lay Mother Earth or at least get her beaten. I'm not convinced by the Newmarket form. All a bit of a heap, all a bit of muddy affair. Not totally blown away by her, although she did it well enough on the day. She could go off prohibitive odds against a load of unknowns in here. So I'll probably look to take her on, but not a race I've got strong convictions on, it has to be said.
All right, guys, it's now time to get our tips for the week. And let's have a look at what's coming up this weekend. Stephen, of course, we need to reflect on your current performance. And, last weekend you had Alba Flora getting home for us. A great result there. And Cliffs of Capri, no result with that runner. You've certainly been in very good form over the past few months. How are you feeling things going into this weekend?
Yeah, just dangerous times, I think, for Punter Shane, because it could be completely different ground by the weekend. And I've sort of assumed and rather hoped it's going to be soft at Newbury on Saturday. I very much like the claims of Spycatcher in the 150. Carl Burke doesn't waste his runs with his horses when he comes down south. And this one has run on soft ground once. Now, a look at the form book will tell you it finished second at Redcar. But watching that run back this morning, he won the race by miles on the wrong side of the track. The winner came on the other side and won comfortably, but he made all the running and blitzed his rivals in what was his half of the race. He's since progressed. He came out and won at Pontefract against a huge bias against the far rail. He had to come up the middle, quickened up smartly, was very taken with that. And last time at Ascot in a much better race, I thought he was far from disgraced, didn't really get the run of it. I believe he's sort of 7, 8, maybe even 10 to 1 at the moment. That is a very fair price. I've got big ground concerns at the front of the market. And the other one I like is in the 225. We've already mentioned Al Arzi, William Haggis. He's around even 6 to 5. I think that's a fair price. I suspect he'll be odds on by the time they get to the post. He's done it at Newbury. He's very progressive. If it rains, soft ground's absolutely fine. I think he'll win again. He's a top-class prospect.
All right, let's recap those selections for this weekend from Stephen. We've got Spycatcher currently at around 10 to 1 with Ladbrokes. We can have 3 units on it to win, and Al Arzi currently 2 units to win on it at 6 to 5 with Skybet. So we're focusing with Stephen on Newbury on Saturday. All right, Ed, let's reflect on your tips from last week, and of course Brentford Hope. Unfortunately, missing the prize there, but Coppolis was able to land a victor. We've got good odds about it. And of course, I've got to give you a pat on the back because you have been spruiking one runner that we had to shift our attention for, whichever meeting it was running at, but got the prize for us.
yeah, Ben Pauling's your darling. That was always the danger they could swap to the alternative race he was entered in, and so be it. Yeah, he did. He rocked up to Huntingdon instead, but he did get the job done. He perhaps wasn't a Stonewell in, as I hyperbole when I put it on record, but nonetheless he did win.
No, but you're in tipping form at the moment, and that's good to see as we have a look there at what you like for this weekend. Take us through your selections.
Yeah, my main fancy would be Santiago. I just think that you'll see a totally different horse to what we saw in his glorified prep run last time out. Look, if you ever wanted to see a horse where ring rush removal was the job, that was last time out. Look, this is a horse with a lot of class. He's an Irish Derby winner. He was 4th in the St. Leger in a bit of a messy affair. Look, he was only beaten 2 lengths by Stradivarius in the Goodwood Cup. That is very, very good form. I wouldn't be worried if the rains continue to arrive at York. The one time he's officially encountered soft ground, he actually hacked up at Royal Ascot in the Queen's Vase. I think he's an improving type. He's the type that will go on to make an Ascot Gold Cup at some stage. I just think he's still unexposed. There should be a lot more to come from Santiago. I understand Sir Ron Priestley won well last time out, but he's got to back that up pretty quickly, it has to be said. And I think he's in a tougher race here potentially as well. So, yeah, he'd be my main fancy. And then there's another one I'm going to go with here is old Good Boy Bobby for Nigel Twister Davies. Just switching codes to the jumps for a minute here. It's a horse who's been in my tracker for some time with the notes, please step up in trip next to his name. Well, I've got my wish here because after being habitually campaigned over 2.5 miles, which sometimes it just totally confuses me. It's like you keep running a horse. It does the same thing every time, right? It gets outpaced and does its best work at the end. And then you just keep running it over the same trip every time. Makes no sense to me. Well, alas, at last, they've decided to go up in distance. He's in a couple of 3-mile assignments. I just think this could be his trip. I can understand perhaps why they've been running over 2.5, because he has had the tendency to be a little bit free. But once he settles, he often tends to do his best work in the closing stages. If you go back to December at Cheltenham in December Gold Cup when he was back over fences, he was doing all his best work in that race to finish 4th behind Chatham Street Lad. He's been fighting at a much higher level, shall we say, over the course of last year. He's in much calmer waters over hurdles here today. So, yeah, Good Boy Bobby. I believe he goes to Huntingdon on Tuesday now with Daryl Jacob on. He'd be my selection.
All right, we need to keep a close eye on that as we recap your selection. So we've got York on Friday, feature race of Group 2 Yorkshire Cup. Pretty confident around Santiago getting back to winning ways. Currently at 9 to 4 with Bet365. And Good Boy Bobby set to run possibly Saturday or even maybe later in the week. But certainly, as I mentioned, Ed, you've been in a very good form. Good to see a couple of nice results last week. All right, my selections as we reflect on my performance of last week. I only had the one runner, and that was Ocean Road, who stepped out. She ran 3rd at the each way quote in the Fillies trial at at Lingfield. She missed the start, which was quite frustrating, but she ran on well. And my other runner, Rodrigo Diaz, was a scratching, so I actually was able to come out on top. So we have a look for my thoughts, though, going into this weekend, and I'm quite keen on the card at Newbury. I do like a horse called Satano Japan, who had absolutely no luck out. Sorry, I should say this is the meeting at York on Friday. Satano Japan had no luck at all last time out. Ryan Moore took the ride on that occasion, didn't get clear running at all, and basically went to the line under a bit of a hold. I think off the inside barrier, Ryan might be slightly more aggressive on Friday, and currently at around the 11-2 mark with Paddy Power. I think Satano Japan's a very good each-way bet. I'm going to push the boundaries a little bit with the meeting at Newbury on Saturday. I'm taking a double because I think if Logician turns up anywhere near his best form, 2-1 is a steal, and I think he'll win the Al Rayyan Stakes. And I also think Palace Pier is an absolute moral. Probably the regret saying those words next week, but I think on pure form, Palace Pier will win the Lockinge Stakes. So I'm happy to say Logician into Palace Pier just might be a ready-made double for us as we recap on my thoughts. So just touching on those runners again. So Satano Japan, York on Friday. Take the double Logician, Palace Pier at Newbury on Saturday. And hopefully we get a result. Stephen and Ed, I think it's going to be a fantastic week of racing. Stephen, we should learn a lot more about the season ahead with what we see on Saturday.
Yeah, we're going to get a much clearer picture of all the classics. I must tip up one horse I've had a tip for, Shane. I know we like a French horse. David Manouzier has hit form in the last week. He's got one at York on Friday, Blue Cup, who was the unluckiest loser I've ever seen at Epsom under Ryan Moore. An atrocious ride. They've jocked Moore off. And I'm not sure who's actually riding at this stage, but it's not Ryan Moore. Manouzier is flying. Blue Cup at York, around about 3-1. On Friday. Should be very hard to beat.
Good luck to you, Stephen. Ed, as I mentioned with Stephen, I think it's going to be a really intriguing and very interesting weekend ahead. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we get a lot more clues, not just in the kind of classics, but some of the bigger races going further afield, haven't we? Obviously, likes of Palace Pier coming back, Lope Fernandez, Logician, some exciting types to, rolling out again for another year and reviews with the view to the likes of like the Eclipse and middle distance races going further forward. Yeah, definitely lots of stuff I'm looking forward to. But yeah, Balloza, the Jane Chapelheim individual at the weekends, definitely one she said she's got the tagline of perhaps the best horse she's trained. Well, now that could all end in tears, couldn't it? But yeah, lots of informative action again this weekend. I'm going to be fairly quiet on the punting front on the day, I think, and I think the crucial thing we've underlined the most is you're a braver man than me, Shane, with Palace Pier and Logician. I think you've got two genuine good to firm ground horses there where, yes, I agree on form, they're head and shoulders above the rest, but the heavens are opening everywhere at the moment, so that the weather will be key, I think, to a lot of how punting is dictated this weekend.
Yeah, fancy an Australian putting his faith in the English weather. I'll probably end up with a look on my face. Guys, great to catch up. Good luck this weekend. There we have Ed Quigley and Stephen Harris with their look ahead to what hopefully will be a great weekend of racing in the UK and also France. And of course, we've got great racing coming our way in the United States. The second leg of the US Triple Crown. It's the Preakness Stakes. And it's wonderful to have Anthony Stabile joining us once again. Anthony, good to catch up. I've got to say, well done. You went so close in the Kentucky Derby with Mandaloon, your selection just being denied, but you're clearly in form.
Yeah, we got thank you very much. Got a nice little thrill right around the 3/8 pole when he went around, Mandaloon went around Medina Spirit. I thought he was going to leave him. I thought he was going to leave him good, but Medina Spirit dug in, held on. A fantastic horse race. We haven't seen a lot of these four-horse, almost, like an accordion coming through the lane, and it was a great finish to a pretty fun race. And now we look ahead to the second jewel of the Triple Crown, and I'll tell you what, if it was a diamond, the clarity would not be perfect going into the Preakness this year.
Before we get your selections for the Preakness Stakes, we have to touch on the controversy of the Kentucky Derby with Medina Spirit, the winner of the race, since now coming out with the first test suggesting there was a drug positive. Of course, we're waiting on the split sample to confirm whether or not the race will be taken from him. But as a passionate racing follower, as you are, as a person who's invested heavily in the sport, this has to be one of the great challenges that the industry will be facing in the United States, to have its most prestigious race now clouded in such controversy.
Yeah, after 2009, it's funny that the Kentucky Derby The last three runnings now have been shrouded in a bit of controversy and a bit of unknown. We go from the disqualification of maximum security for the interference on race day. We go from moving the race from the first Saturday in May to the first Saturday in September due to the COVID. And now this. It's not the first post-race medication positive. Dancer's Image back in 1968. But nothing's been done yet here. And we're waiting for that split sample. I think people are most upset. The thing you've heard a lot this week is where there is smoke, there's ordinarily fire. And this barn has had an awful lot of positives in the last year alone, let alone throughout the storied career of Bob Baffert. And now, what happens in most famous race, there's been some differing of opinion as to what actually happened with this horse. And I guess what they're settling on is a skin ointment to treat a rash he had that's been pretty well video and documented with photographs. We'll see how it all shakes out, Shane. It's unfortunate. I'd much rather keep the attention and the business on the racetrack as opposed to off of it. And thankfully, we still have a race to run. We have 10 3-year-olds. One of them is Medina Spirit. A deal was worked out between the Bob Baffert stable and Pimlico Racetrack to not only enter Medina Spirit, the morning line favorite, but the second choice on the line as well, the Rebel winner and third place finisher in the Arkansas Derby Concert Tour.
Does it make it harder for you as a tipster, as a form analyst, to actually do the form for a race like the Preakness when there is perhaps an asterisk next to the name of the Kentucky Derby winner, Medina Spirit? Or do you just disregard that and say, this is the field we've got, and this is hopefully who the winner will be?
You have to, it's human nature to take it all into account. But I do think at the end of the day, you have to get to the crux of the PPs, the past performances, and you have to handicap the race. Do you keep it in the back of your mind? I think it's impossible not to. But I try not to let that influence my handicapping in this race. I will say this. I probably have never contemplated something off of the racetrack more than I have this, but it's for a number of reasons, and the biggest one being the obstacle any horse, whether it's the winner or an also-ran, faces going from the Derby to the Preakness, and that is that 2 weeks. Most of these horses have never run back in 2 weeks. Most of them never will. So, that's something that I think that's where it affects it the most. If you think this horse was given some help and it wasn't skin cream, I find it very hard to like him if you're believing this horse was used as drug as an injection. I would defend, and I have never been a Baffert defender or apologist. I'm not a detractor, but I'm not one of these people that champions the cause. He's another one of the trainers on the past performances to me. It's hard for me to believe that this horse has run. This horse has been hickory from December 11th to Derby Day. He's run 6 times. That's not something you ordinarily see with a horse that gets extra help. More often than not, you see these horses have big gaps in their form, and this horse has run well in all 6 of those starts, first or second. His biggest issue is he's never passed a horse, yet he doesn't get passed. So when he gets to the lead, he doesn't get passed. When he's got to pass horses, he doesn't do it. I think that's more of an issue come Saturday for him as opposed to, any of the stuff off the racetrack. It'll be curious to see, though, how this all shakes out.
You've touched on a really good point as we have a look at the field for the Preakness Stakes, and that is the uniqueness of this Triple Crown series. You run over 1.25 miles, 10 furlongs, 2,000 metres in the Kentucky Derby. You then go to Pimlico, which is a tighter track perhaps than, shall we say, at Churchill Downs, and it's a shorter trip, just marginally shorter, at 1 mile and 3/16 or 1,900 metres. And then, of course, we progress to the third leg of the Triple Crown, the Belmont, on the big Belmont course over 1.5 miles, 2,400 metres. So it is an enormous test, but as you touched on, for these horses to do it in such a short period, condensed period of time, the 1.25 miles of the Kentucky Derby into the Preakness Stakes, it really is only a race that a great horse can take the double in. We've seen it over its long storied history. 36 horses previously win the Kentucky Derby and go on to then take out the Preakness Stakes. Do you think, on what you've seen thus far, Medina Spirit has the qualities to be the 37th?
So he can absolutely win this race. I will say this. He has been a machine this year. He's never had more than 5 weeks between his starts, which bodes well. I want to say it was, I'm going to sneak, I usually don't do this, I'm going to sneak a look, but 23 days between his maiden win and his second race. So now he's coming back at 14. That's not much difference. And he's performed well, like I said, in all 6 of his starts. So, under usual circumstances, without all of the controversy surrounding him, that would be one less thing you'd worry about as much. You're still going to worry about these horses coming back in 2 weeks. We just frankly don't do it here, especially with our good horses, with the upper echelon horses. We don't wheel these horses back. There's no reason to. There's another grade one and another lucrative pot waiting for you 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later. So there's time, the space. Not when it comes to the Triple Crown. That's why it's so hard to do. 36, you know what's funny? I'm glad you had that number because I did not have that number. That's pretty high. When you consider there's been 146, that's right around 25% of horses pull off this double. I would have thought that number would have been a little lower than you think about all of the horses that have come to Belmont Park with a chance to win the Triple Crown and have failed just in my lifetime, and you start to realize that that number's just about right. He could win this race. I didn't love, to me, when he came back from the Derby, and we talked about how he has answered the bell 6 times since December 11th. That's a lot. That's a lot for Bob Baffert trained horses. They don't get this treatment, not in that short amount of time. This is a guy that won the Triple Crown with Justify in 2018. The horse was an unraced maiden in the middle of February. He won the Triple Crown 4 months later. So for a horse, and he trains them hard. He lays them on the fence. They work fast in the morning. For this horse to withstand that training is a testament to him. I didn't like the way he looked in the moments after the Derby. He looked like he had been through a war, and he was. That was a heck of a horse race. He took on a handful of challenges. He survived 3 horses taking shots at him for the last quarter of a mile. He looked beat up when the Derby was over. Now, with all of the controversy surrounding him and all of the attention and having to get back to that kind of race, he'll need that kind of race to win this Preakness. He'll need his Derby effort to win the Preakness. I'm a little dubious.
Who do you want to select then going into the Preakness if you're not going to side with the Kentucky Derby winner?
Yeah, like I said, he can win. I'm taking the 2 Chad Brown runners. Chad Brown, one of the best trainers. I think he's, right now the top tier in the state. He has 2 runners. He has a horse named Risk Taking, who was my Derby horse. I had played 2 horses in the Kentucky Derby Future, and Risk Taking was one of them. He won a couple of races here at Aqueduct this winter. I was actually really happy with the fact I got to call his maiden win, and then he won the Withers, both at Aqueduct. He then ran at the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct, and he did not fire. He did not fire at all. And he is reminiscent of our Derby selection, Mandaloon, who had 2 really good races at the fairgrounds. And then in the Louisiana Derby, it was a different track. Shane, I'm 44 years old. Aqueduct I have my mail forwarded to Aqueduct every week. That's how much time I spend over at Aqueduct. I had never seen the track play the way it played on Wood Memorial Day. Deep, holding moisture in it. It wasn't muddy. It wasn't good. It wasn't sloppy. It was just holding moisture. It was a real deep, heavy surface. This horse came back covered in mud. I talked to Chad yesterday on the Horse Racing Radio Network on our afternoon show, and he said, "Yeah, he don't think he liked that racetrack We were able to almost pull it off at 26-1 with the same kind of theory going into the Derby. I think he's the right horse, and more importantly, he's got 6 weeks between races. He's trained in company with the other runner in there, his Crowded Trade, who might have some issue with the added distance. I don't know how far Crowded Trade wants to go. I would not be surprised if, when all was said and done here, that Crowded Trade turned out to be a more talented horse and a more accomplished horse, perhaps, than Risk Taking. But I think the distance, the setup in the race, I think Risk Taking and Crowded Trade give Chad Brown and Klarovich Stables. They teamed up to win this back in 2017 with Cloud Computing. Javier Castellano, who's going to ride Crowded Trade, was aboard Cloud Computing 4 years ago. The Ortiz will ride Risk Taking. I think they come in with a very live hand. Chad Brown comes in with a very live hand here, so I'm going to try those two.
Well, I think you raise a really interesting point there. So if we side with the two Chad Brown runners, I mean, in early markets, Crowder trades at 10-1. Risk Taking's currently at around 15-1. So you're going to get a great run for your money at that sort of price.
Yeah, they're good prices. The Baffert runners are gonna take all of the in every possible way. The Bob Baffert runners are going to take attention. You and I were talking before we went on the air. It would not surprise me if Concert Tour went favored over Medina Spirit with everything that's going on, and the shadow of doubt, the shred of doubt going into this when you're looking at Medina Spirit. It wouldn't surprise me. Now, Concert Tour's a horse. From the day he broke his maiden, I have not gotten the infatuation with this horse. And I feel as the distances have gotten longer, he has shown a little vulnerability. The reason to play the Preakness, save the fact that it's the second jewel of the Triple Crown, I don't like this horse at all on Saturday. So if Concert Tour wins, I lose. I'll use those two Chad Brown runners. I'll use Medina Spirit defensively, and I'm going to use a horse named Rombauer, who was the other horse I had in the Kentucky Derby Future Wagers. They had enough points. They decided not to go to the Derby. He's going to need some help up front. He's going to need some pace help. He's a closer. Back in the Bluegrass's last prep for what everybody thought was going to be a run in the Derby. He laid closer than he ever had before. I won't be surprised if he comes making a big run. He's laid at around 12 or 15-1 on the morning line. I would imagine he's going to be the same price at post time. So I think there's a chance to make some money in this race on Saturday by pitching Concert Tour and maybe beating and getting Medina Spirit out of the money as well.
I like your style. Well, you went so close in the Derby for us with Mandaloon at a monster price. I think when you tipped him, he was around the 15-1 quote, but he jumped to almost double that on race day and was beaten a neck. So hopefully we can strike again with Risk Taking, Crowded Trade, and certainly Rombauer, I should say, all at decent prices there. Of course, Anthony, all of your selections, of course, will be available at VegasInsider.com, plus detailed analysis for the Preakness.
Yes, there's a detailed analysis up. If you can't get enough of this beautiful face, there'll be a video up on Vegas Insider as well.
Looking forward to it. Good luck with the Preakness, and of course we'll look forward to touching base as we head towards the Belmont, the third leg of the Triple Crown. Thanks, Anthony.
You got it, Shane.
There's Anthony Stabile. Great insight there, and hopefully we can find a bit of value there going into the Preakness Stakes with the controversial Kentucky Derby winner Medina Spirit likely to jump favourite or close to favourite. But certainly with those selections there from Anthony, we will certainly be in it for a long way with horses at big prices. Well, I hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump To It for IrishRacing.com and Betting Expert. Make sure you head to IrishRacing.com to get all the latest form, news and opinions and tips and race cards for racing in the UK and Ireland. BettingExpert.com. Stephen Harris has his daily tips, his best bet or his nap, and also value runner. And of course, we've got to give a plug to our good friends in the United States with VegasInsider.com, and you'll get plenty of great coverage as we head towards the second leg of the Triple Crown. Hope you've enjoyed today's edition of Jump To It. We'll see you next week.